You know, it's easy to think she doesn't care. When she left, when she stopped texting first, when she seemed so cold, it almost felt like your worth was invisible. And maybe you believed that if you disappeared from her life, she wouldn't even notice. But listen carefully when a woman sees that you've moved on, truly moved on, not pretending, not a performance. But when she senses that your energy is no longer chained to her approval, something deep inside her shifts, a woman feels that loss. Because women don't measure value by words alone, they feel your emotional presence. And when your emotional presence vanishes, when she can no longer feel that you're orbiting around her, it does something even she might not understand. If you are a young man sitting in that painful place of heartbreak, wondering if she even notices you're gone, this is where your healing begins. Not by trying to make her feel something, but by understanding how deeply your emotional self-worth affects her. You don't need revenge, you need freedom. And freedom is exactly what she will feel and fear when she realizes you have finally moved on. You know, what shakes her most isn't seeing you with someone new. It's sensing that you no longer need her validation. There's something almost invisible but very real about this shift. Before, even in silence, even when you stopped calling or texting, you still lived in her emotional orbit. Maybe you thought you cut her off, but inside she still felt your presence. Because you were still scrolling her pictures late at night. You were still carrying silent questions in your mind, wondering if she thinks of you, wondering if she'll reach out. That invisible energy, she felt it, and it comforted her. But then you started to move differently. You stopped checking her page. You stopped wondering if she cared. You began investing in yourself almost quietly. And as you rebuilt, as you refocused, as your life began to breathe again without her shadow hanging over it, that's when she started to feel it. She couldn't quite explain it to herself, but something felt missing. Not your body, not your voice, but your energy, your emotional attachment. It had vanished. And women are wired to feel that, to sense that shift. That's why you must understand true moving on isn't loud. It's not about announcing to the world that you're healed. It's about becoming so invested in yourself, so centered in your purpose, that she no longer lives rent-free in your mind. And she feels that absence like a cold wind. She may not show it right away. She may even pretend she doesn't notice. But she notices. Because a woman always feels the difference between a man who is still seeking her approval and a man who has quietly withdrawn that need. And when you become that man, when you stop performing strength and actually start living it, that's when you truly reclaim your power. That's when you step into masculine energy in its purest form, not through anger or resentment, but through independence and purpose. And ironically, that's when she finally notices your worth. Not because you shouted your growth, but because your peace became impossible to ignore. That's what she feels when you move on. That's what she fears when your heart finally lets go. And that's what you must understand. Her feelings are no longer the measure of your healing. Your growth is. One of the hardest truths to sit with is this: sometimes her feelings come too late. It's almost cruel, isn't it? You gave so much of yourself when you were together, your time, your attention, your loyalty, and maybe even after the breakup, you still held space for her, quietly hoping that one day she'd recognize what you offered. But when she finally does feel something, it's often at a moment when you've already begun your healing journey, when you're learning to breathe differently, to see life without her at its center. And that is when she starts to feel it. Not the old you clinging to her memory, but the new you walking away from her orbit. And I want you to understand this: that shift in her doesn't necessarily mean love has returned. Sometimes it's just panic. Sometimes it's the sudden realization that the emotional power she thought she could always access is gone. For many women, it's comforting to know that there's still a man somewhere out there waiting, even if she doesn't plan to come back. But when she senses you've detached, when she feels your attention retreat, it creates a kind of emptiness for her too. It's not always about regret. Sometimes it's about losing the comfort of knowing she still had a place in your mind. This is why your emotional discipline matters so much. When she feels you've moved on, her reaction, whether it's curiosity, sadness, or sudden nostalgia, is no longer your responsibility to manage. And that's difficult because part of you still wonders, does this mean something? Is this a second chance? But you have to remember, moving on isn't about making her notice. It's about building a life so full, so grounded, so rich in purpose that her presence or absence no longer determines your peace. She may reach out. She may hover around your digital world. She may even test the waters, sending messages that seem harmless, but are really about checking whether you still feel something. And that's when you must stand firm, not in coldness, but in clarity. Her feelings coming late don't require you to turn back. They require you to keep moving forward. Your future isn't behind you, it's ahead. That is where your attention belongs now. That is where your healing takes root. Here's the painful irony that so many men discover only after the heartbreak has hardened into wisdom when you finally move on. When your energy no longer whispers her name in the quiet moments, that's when she truly sees your worth. Isn't that a cruel twist? When you needed her recognition, when you longed for her to appreciate the depth of your love, she seemed blind to it. But when your back is turned, when your heart is no longer begging, when your eyes stop scanning for her shadow, suddenly she feels it. Suddenly she recognizes it. But my dear brother, that recognition isn't for you anymore. That awakening she has isn't meant to pull you back. It's not a sign from the universe that you should give her another chance. It's simply her reality catching up to your absence. You must understand this deeply because many men falter here. They mistake her late realization for renewed commitment, for love reawakened. But often it's not love, it's loss. It's the absence of your emotional availability that she's reacting to, not the presence of her own devotion. This is where your emotional intelligence must guide you. You're not the same man anymore. You've grown through the ache, you've rebuilt the pieces of yourself that once broke for her approval, and you've learned, sometimes through tears, that your value isn't measured by her attention. Her late realization is a lesson for her soul, not yours. You're not responsible for how long it took her to appreciate you, and your worth isn't validated by her regret. And yes, she might reach out. She might text late at night with memories you thought she had long forgotten. She might remind you of songs you shared, places you went, inside jokes that once belonged to only the two of you. But that's not an invitation for you to return. It's a reflection of her confronting what she lost. Your job is not to answer every echo from the past. Your job is to walk forward with grace, with dignity, with a quiet power that says, I honor we had, but I don't belong there anymore. That's what true freedom looks like. That's what she feels when you've really moved on. Not bitterness, not anger, but distance, calm, and an unmistakable masculine peace that can no longer be pulled back into her orbit. You see, the real evidence that you've moved on isn't in your words. It's in your habits. It's the way you start living differently, quietly, intentionally. Maybe before, you would scroll through her stories late at night, catching every detail, holding on to any subtle clue that she might still care. You'd pause over old pictures, replay old voice notes. Reread old conversations like a man trying to find the warmth in fading ashes. But when you truly move on, that energy dies gently. You stop looking. You stop measuring her silence. You stop waiting for her to validate your worth, even from a distance. And she can feel that more than you realize. She feels it in your absence, not your physical absence, but your emotional absence. Your energy is no longer reaching for her, and that is something women are exquisitely sensitive to. Even if she never says it out loud, even if she pretends not to notice, she notices. It's in the sudden way she starts liking your posts again, commenting on something small, sending that, hey, just checking in message that seems casual, but is so much more than that. It's her way of asking, where did your attention go? Why aren't you looking at me anymore? This is why your habits matter so much. Because when you move your attention away from her and back into your own life, your own fitness, your work, your purpose, your peace, she feels that shift. You've stopped giving her free access to your emotional space. And that space, my brother, is sacred. When you choose to protect it, you become magnetic, not just to her, but to everyone who encounters you. Your focus, your discipline, your commitment to yourself, these are the signs of a man who is whole again. And this isn't about attracting her back. That's not your goal anymore. Your goal is to heal so deeply that even if she returns, you no longer need her to complete you. Your life is full. Your time is precious. Your presence is powerful. And she will feel all of that without you saying a single word. That's what true moving on looks like. That's what she senses when your habits change. It's the silent message that says, I'm no longer waiting for you to see me. I see myself now. A freedom isn't loud, my dear brother. It's not something you shout or post about or try to prove. No, real freedom is subtle, almost invisible to the outside world, but deeply felt by anyone who ever held space in your heart. And when a woman senses that your peace no longer depends on her, when she feels that the air between you is no longer charged with your longing, your wondering, your invisible tether, that's when it shakes her in ways she can't quite explain. She sees you walking differently, smiling differently, living differently. And it forces her to look in the mirror she avoided while you were still clinging to her emotionally. That's the thing about emotional freedom. It becomes a mirror for the one who once had a grip on your soul. She starts to question, did I undervalue him? Did I overlook something precious? And yet, here's where you must be so clear within yourself her reflection is not your closure. Her sudden realization isn't a chapter reopening. It's a chapter finally closing properly in her mind. Your closure has already happened the moment you chose to reclaim your peace. The moment you decided your value was not tied to whether she ever sees it. And oh, it's tempting. It's so tempting to respond when she reaches back out, to interpret her curiosity as commitment, her nostalgia as love reborn. But I want you to hear this truth: her check-ins, her gentle taps on the door of your new life, they aren't necessarily invitations for something beautiful to begin again. Sometimes they're just echoes of a woman realizing too late that your emotional presence was something rare, something she didn't fully honor when she had it. This is why your healing must be rooted in independence, not in her validation. When you carry that peace, true, masculine, grounded peace, people can feel it even in your silence. It's magnetic, it's powerful. And yes, she will respect it, even if she never admits it aloud. But you're not walking this path so she can respect you now. You're walking this path because you finally respect yourself. That's what she feels when you've truly moved on a calm, quiet, untouchable strength that can't be pulled back into her orbit. A man who no longer needs closure from her because he's already found it within himself. Here's the deepest truth you need to embrace. When a woman senses that you are truly independent, not just physically gone, not just silent, but emotionally free, she feels that absence more than anything. You see, most men don't actually move on. They leave, yes. They stop calling, they block her, they change their routines, but inside, they're still tied to her. They're still carrying her memory, still hoping that one day she'll reach out and say what they wanted to hear all along. I miss you. I realize your worth now. But when you're different, when you're the rare man who doesn't just leave, but actually lets go, that's what she feels at her core. It's an energy shift. Emotional independence is rare and it's powerful. When your mind is no longer orbiting around her approval, when your habits, your thoughts, your dreams no longer bend in her direction, she can sense it like a change in the weather. It unsettles her because it means she no longer has emotional access to you. And here's what makes this moment so critical. She may admire that independence. She may mourn it. She may even be drawn back to it. But your freedom has to be protected, not for her sake, but for yours. She might admire the man you've become, but admiration isn't commitment. Mourning isn't reconciliation. And nostalgia isn't love. You must recognize that her feelings, however genuine they seem, are no longer yours to